Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Cleaning Lady. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So first and foremost, there's the whole situation with Armand in prison. Obviously, Tony's seeing him for the first time, and I was kind of wondering, like, how are you going to get into? You're going to go see Armand because you know that, like, the cops are going to have, like, there's going to be records of you going to visit him. So how do you get dance around? It's like, well, by being honest, it's like, hey, he helped save my son's life, so I wanted him to know, hey, Luca's back home and safe and everything's good. You also want to follow me anywhere, Garrett, because you could follow me to my husband's funeral because that's where I'm going to next. So, because she's like, yeah, like. Because Garrett's still looking out for Tony in his own way. It's like, he has his inklings about her, but he's like, I don't think you're involved in all this, but, well, specifically your husband's murder. But it kind of looks suspicious because it's like, the significant other is always the one that kind of gets, like, especially the wife in those circumstances, is always kind of looked at as the number one suspect. Ironically enough, you know, it is a little close to home, Marco's killer, but it's not Tony, obviously, it's Chris, but still. But, Armand tries to tell Tony it's okay. The reason why things kind of played out the way it did was because there were a multitude of reasons why it played out like that. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's like Marco taking Luca came at the worst possible time. They were trying to get the money for Armand, but Hayek kind of screwed that up, and obviously because he found out about Armand, ended up trying to kill Armand. Luckily, Armand survived, but because of what he warned the FBI about, they were able to shut down the crypto, you know, when they were, when Fee and Tony were trying to get the money last episode. So that in turn kind of sets up a lot of stuff I think is going to be a major overarching thing this season, and that's the whole Robert situation. So because, you know, Nadia was so desperate to get the money to try and get Armand out of jail, that's where you had to, like, include the whole Robert thing. But that's going to be, it's just, the dominoes just keep falling. It's like if they hadn't interrupted that, they would have never had to turn to Robert. But, you know, what ifs are just that, they're what ifs. That's not what happened, and this is the situation they're currently stuck in. And Armand meets up with that actor. I've seen him in a multitude of things. I think Pete's probably the most recent thing I saw him as in Animal Kingdom. Now, listen, that might be I might be confusing him with another actor. I'm not sure. I'm trying to think, like, is that the same actor or is that a different actor? I'm not sure. Either way, it might be a different actor. I might be confusing those two. Either way, the actor who played Pete in Animal Kingdom and this guy who helped out Armand this episode, which I still think he did hook Armand up. Because Armand did want Hayek alone, so it's like, oh, how do I get him alone? It's like, oh, the easiest thing is like, oh, we act like we're in his service. I mean, I don't think they doubled crossed Armand. I think that was them playing into it like, oh, sorry, bro, it's about the highest bidder. I mean, it might be. It's kind of a scorched earth type of situation because, like, Hayek ended up being killed, but I think that is interesting how, like, Hayek exits the show because he's dead. That's going to be interesting. I mean, specifically, I wonder what's going to happen with his son, because he basically shipped his son back to their wasn't it like to basically be a soldier in a war is kind of what his father's like last season. And there's also his daughter, which there's a complicated relationship there too. So I don't know if either one of them is going to pop up in the story. I mean, there's still, because the casino is in, like, Nadia runs things day to day, but it's all still in Hayek's daughter's name. So I don't know if they're going to, like, be any, like, presence in the show again or not. We'll have to wait and see. But also everything with his son, because his son could easily try to come back home. It's like, oh, this is my father's kingdom, I'm going to be the one to run things. We'll see. Because after like a couple episodes, because he kind of got shipped off, and he was kind of taken by surprise when his dad made that announcement, and his mom's just kind of like, hey, you know what it is, your dad is the way your dad is, and he thinks it's such an honor for you to be part of like the military, part of the fight to reclaim our homeland. So whether he might not be able to get away enough to try and reclaim anything, but it's like you feel like Hayek's death would set some stuff in motion. But it definitely feels like him dying in the same episode that we're introduced to Naveen Andrews' character, which I'm like, hey, I want to say Instinct might be the last thing I saw him in. It was a CBS show with Alan Cumming. I want to say that's probably the most recent thing I saw him in. Obviously, best known for Lost and Sense8. So that's pretty dope. And I'm assuming he's going to be kind of like a main antagonist, or at least main antagonistic character in this story, especially when it comes to Armand and probably Tony too. I'm curious his connections, is it just to Nadia or is it to Nadia and Armand? Like, he definitely seems like he kind of has a thing for Nadia, which is like, oh, that's kind of complicated because like he has a thing for Nadia. Nadia's obviously in love with Armand. I mean, it's her husband, but like Armand's more so into Tony, but still got to keep up the whole him and Nadia thing because he wants to be loyal and loving to Nadia considering all that she's done for him, but it's still the thing of, yeah, she's a wife and you love her, but you're also in love with Tony, which Tony is obviously in love with you too, and it's just, and that's going to be a complicated mess for both of your families. Either way, since I did bring up Hayek's son earlier, it was interesting that Hayek's final words were like, oh, I loved you more than my own son. I was like, Jesus, those are your last words to be like, yeah, I loved you more than my son. My son sucked, but you were, it's like, yeah, but that's also the thing. I was like a son to you, but you didn't always treat me like a son. You treated me like I was, like I owed you, like you were doing me a favor that I will always be in obligation to you. Like, it would never just be a thing of like, yeah, like everything went super sideways last season because you wouldn't give him the casino. Like, it's just like it's like nothing he did was enough to you because you left everything to your daughter, even though I'm supposed to be like, you love me more than your son. But it's like, yeah, I still wasn't enough to be like family in certain regards. So it's like, yeah, Hayek kind of brought it upon himself. But speaking of Robert, he definitely seems like he's going to be a scary dude to deal with because especially when Tony interacted with him, the moment he was like, oh, did you check her for wires? And his guy was like, no. I was like, oh, he's going to flip out on me. He was like, oh, okay. He was so chillax about it. I was like, that's weird. Because that seemed like the whole like, oh, ready to pop off moment. But then he like stripped Tony down and it's like, oh, no wire or anything. I was like, okay, good. Thank you for indulging. You can put your clothes back on. And wham, punches his guy in the face. You're like, Jesus. And it was out of nowhere. And he's like, oh, how much? Oh, you're the cleaning lady, right? How long would it take to clean that up? And she's just, he's like, I'm just kidding. You're not in a tire to clean this up. And it's like, oh, he seems like he's going to be a psycho. And it's like, wow. And like his man could do nothing but just like kneel on the floor after like getting punched and just kind of stood there and take it. Like that's all he could do. So it's like, cool. Nadia also shouldn't have put you in that position, but it's like, right, the feds were watching you, so you really didn't have much choice. But he definitely seems like, oh, that's going to be an issue, especially because Armand probably doesn't know what Nadia had to offer him in exchange for his help. It was part of the gun business. It's like, oh, come on, like, it's like, right, that's my husband's side of things. It's like, yeah, but you're here, working on behalf of your husband, trying to get money to most likely bail him out. So, like, cool, I'll make sure the money's ready. So it's like, Armand's not going to be happy about that, especially considering how he just wrestled everything out of Hayek's hands, and now you're telling me, like, cool, because that's why Hayek didn't want, that's why Armand didn't want this from the beginning. He was like, he knew that this was the worst option, but even Tony was like, we need to get you out of prison, so let Nadia do whatever she needs to do. And it's like, yeah, this is going to be a problem. Once again, you got from underneath Hayek's thumb, and now this guy probably going to be under his thumb for a little while. So, like I said, I definitely feel like he's filling that Hayek void to some extent, and I think he might even be even more dangerous than Hayek. It's like, that guy seems like he might, just like, because he has that suaveness to him. I mean, Naveen Andrews always plays characters because it kind of has this, like, this deadliness, but also the suaveness to it. He like, I think maybe that's just part of him coming through the characters he plays, but he always plays like a very charismatic character. So it just feels like he's going to be kind of like a charismatic psycho is kind of what I'm kind of getting at. I mean, Hayek was very, I think Hayek had his charisma, but I feel like Robert seems like he's definitely more charismatic because I feel like Hayek was very blunt. So, and Robert feels like he could be unpredictable. So, I did like how the money exchange thing happened because obviously they knew that Nadia was being watched. So they set it up like, oh, the judge is in the right place and so is Nadia. Wait, they didn't set up the deal. Wait, what's going on here? And it's like the moment Tony came in with the flowers, I was like, oh yeah, she got the flowers. And she handed it to that guy and he walked out. I was like, the money's in the flowers, isn't it? I was like, because that guy just took the flowers and he left the building. He left the entire funeral thing. I'm like, the money's under the flowers. So I was like, pretty smooth operate, especially because Garrett showed up in time and he's like, oh, I don't see Tony offering any money to anybody, because he's like, oh, she's legitimately here at the funeral. It's like, maybe if you gotten here sooner, you probably would have saw her like handing off, probably wouldn't have thought too much of her handing off the flowers at that time. I think he showed up after she had already handed off the flowers, so he didn't even see that exchange. So it's like, man, it's like, yeah, it was like right. I think the guy had left just when Garrett was like walking in or something like that, or they had definitely walked past each other. So I just thought that was pretty smooth operating, and it kind of works out in the end. So I wonder how this is going to reflect on Catherine, because there was that whole conversation of Catherine being like, oh yeah, like I'm getting a new promotion. It's a job in Miami or something. So she was like, yeah, just try to make me look good. This didn't go well. I don't know if this will necessarily reflect badly on her. Well, because, I mean, truth be told this is actually on the higher ups, because from the beginning, Garrett was like, I don't want to do this because we don't want to take the chance that Armand might, get out of prison. And he got out of prison, plus they weren't able to get anything on the judge. They weren't able to like see him taking the bribe. So it's like, cool, they lost on both fronts, and now Armand's out. So it's like Garrett was right not to, and even Catherine's like, it's what the higher ups want. So it's like, it's egg on their face, but it might just be easier to throw Catherine under the bus, so her promotion might not go the way she's hoping for. I don't know, it might still go through. It's going to be interesting. But speaking of the Garrett situation, he does go and visit, I am blanking on her name right now. They said it in the episode. They said it last episode, and they said it this episode. I'm blanking on it. She's the lady that's selling for Cortez, which I still believe that element of things might still fold into like the Armand side of things, but we'll see whether those storylines stay separate or not. But Garrett tries to get her to say, hey, I'm sorry what happened. Like, the fact is they pulled me off the case. She's like, yeah, like, I'm not here to hear your excuses, nor do I want your pity, because Armand Garrett wants to get her out of the situation that she's in. She's a lot deeper than he thought, because it turns out she's sleeping with Cortez, but that might not be the loving relationship of like, oh yeah, I'm so in love with you. It might be a do whatever you need to survive. It's like, Cortez is probably not the type of guy you say no to, so when something happens, she just kind of went with it, because it's like, yeah, if I don't, he'll probably kill me. Or also just like, hey, this is how I make sure I survive. No one else is looking out for me, so I gotta make opportunities for myself. I gotta do what's best for me. You know, you can judge me all you want, Garrett, you know, but it's like, you're the one that left me high and dry. You're the one that told me to get closer and closer to Cortez, and now it's like, we're here, we're at where we're at right now, and what do you expect, you know, especially when you left me high and dry. So we'll see how things kind of play out from there. Was it Maya? Is that the character's name? I'm blanking on it. I feel like it might be Maya. I don't know. And obviously the other main through line of the episode is Fiona and Marco's parents showing up for Marco's funeral. And you could tell things were going to be spicy the moment Tony wanted to like, hey, try to take her father-in-law's suitcase, and he was kind of like, no. You're like, ooh, I see what time it is here. And the mom, she seems like it's just kind of the thing of like, she's trying to calm her husband down, and I don't know if she 100% feels the same way. The father is like very, like, Marco and Fiona's dad is like super like angry about it, but it's hard to say where their mom stands. It seems like she's just kind of like, she probably shares some of the sentiment, but she's probably not even that, because she's a lot more reserved than the father is, because he goes super in on Tony, saying this is her fault. It's like, if it wasn't for you, my son wouldn't be dead. If you'd come back to Manila when he wanted to, it's like, wait, this is the cop investigating. We got introduced to Torres. It's like, you should have honestly came back when Tony told you to, but to be fair, her father-in-law stepped in and was like, oh, this has something to do with my son's murder. It's like, wait, you put an APB out and you want him to arrest it? It's like, no. It's like, if he took Luca, he was never going to hurt Luca. It's like, did you think he was going to, like, even Detective Torres being like, oh, did you think he was going to hurt Luca? It's like, no, I just, we got into an argument. It's like, and you called the cops on you, were going to get him arrested? So it's like, Tony looks like the biggest villain, and now Fiona's caught in many different regards, because she's stuck between her parents and Tony. And once again, I think she probably has her own conflicted feelings about everything. Because my thing last episode was I didn't know she would blame Tony. And it hasn't come up yet. It could always come up in an argument later on in the season where all this kind of fully boils over and she might be like, you know what? I do blame you, Tony. If you've never gotten involved with Armand, if you had just found another way, it's like, but it's all about saving Luca. But it's like, now it's not even just about saving Luca. You feel so indebted to Armand because she was like, oh, wait, you're going to, it's like, no, I need to do this one thing, cover for me. It's like, well, I don't know what's going on between you and him, Tony. And Tony's like, you didn't see him, Fee. Like, he will be in trouble if we don't get him out. So Fee knows, like, there's something there. She threw it out last episode, and Tony was like, no, it's not like that. When it super is like that between the two of them, so. Because she doesn't want to just, like, minimize it as just being like, oh yeah, there's something between us. Like, there is a spark there, but he is also the person that sacrificed and done so much for Luca that she feels indebted to him. And I think, once again, Armand gets to play hero. He gets to be a hero instead of just like the bad guy. He gets to do some good, especially when it comes to helping the woman that he's secretly in love with. So. But yeah, like I said, Fee's got her complicated feelings because she recognizes that my brother wasn't the greatest person, but time and time again, she would still make excuses for Marco. And now it's like because of all the stuff her parents saying and them kind of ripping into Tony, and they have to keep up the cover story because it's not just for their sake or their parents' sake, it's also for Chris's sake. Because what if their Fiona and Marco's parents found out that Chris is the one that killed, and Chris is like drowning in the guilt because he can't talk to anyone about it because only people who know the truth are Fiona and Tony, as well as the guy who ran like that motel or whatever. He knows the truth, but we're just waiting for him, the shoe to drop with him where he tries to take advantage of this situation because you know he's going to at some point. I'm surprised it didn't come. Well, I guess with everything going on in this episode, there's like so much going on, but he's going to pop up sooner or later with his hand out being like, yo, give me some money or this gets out there and because it's not just about, well, Tony and Fiona helped cover up a crime. So there's that. But two, like Chris would go away for a long time. He'd get locked up for it. Also, the thing is like, because do correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think, I could be mistaken. Chris's legal status in the country, like him and Fiona's, wasn't resolved last season. They're still in the middle of all that, aren't they? Or what? I don't think they finished that citizenship stuff. So he could easily, sadly, get him and Fiona. Like, well, specifically him, if he gets arrested, he could get deported if that ends up becoming the case. I think. Like I said, I don't remember now. I don't think that citizen stuff got resolved last season. I think, once again, they were like, she was paying the lawyer fees and stuff like that, and she found out that her lawyer was kind of bleeding her dry. But I remember she confronted the lawyer and put him on blast and stuff like that. But they might have resolved that, and I'm just not remembering. It's either jail or it could either be deportation if that citizenship stuff isn't resolved. But at the very least, he could still go to jail for a long time, so. And even Fiona has that moment with Chris, because Chris ran away like after he got that heated argument between his mom and Tony and his grandparents. Because Fiona's like, Marco had like a gambling addiction. The fact of the matter is, when he was with Luca, he was running away from whoever he had money to. It's like the story they're telling. And it's like, yeah, he did showcase his gambling addiction and issues. But their dad is kind of still being like, well, Tony's the one that pushed him to it. It's like, yeah. Also throwing out the fact is he took the money that Tony was saving up to save Luca's life and he bet with it. And yes, he did. So not having to completely lie, sprinkling in the truth to sell the lie a little bit more. I mean, because there is a lot of truth about, yes, his gambling addiction, him taking the money that was meant for Luca and gambling with it. So. But Chris, like his family being so torn up about something that he did and that guilt is eating him alive. He's like, I should turn myself in. But Fiona's like, no, you can never tell anyone ever about it. He's like, then we're going to have to spend the rest of our lives lying about it. And so I think having Chris be in that position weighs heavy on Fiona and, having to lie herself. It's just a lot because once again, she's doing all this to protect her son, but also it's like, yeah, once again, don't want to let your parents know the truth about what's happening, so. And the sad thing is, you know, Chris and Jazz, like she said that thing of, right, like Luca, nothing you're feeling right now can compare to Luca, who's lost his dad. Like, you know, kind of almost like put your feelings aside. I mean, obviously she's saying that because she has no idea what Chris is going through, but it's like hearing that probably makes him feel even guilty because it's like being like, yeah, he misses his dad, which, you know, Chris ended up in accidentally killing. It's just everything went like, once again, the conversation will always be if Tony hadn't made the choices that she made, the dominoes wouldn't have led to where they did. Marco made choices of his own and suffered the consequences for him. Did he deserve to die? No. Was he on some like, yo, you're acting crazy right now, you're not acting rational? Like, he was, and even once again, I stress it, he was saying some super manipulative stuff of like, oh, I knew that if I went back to Manila with Luca, you'd end up coming back. Like, he was so desperate, I guess, to keep his family as a whole, but it was super controlling of him to be like, though, how I make sure we stay as a family is I manipulate you. I'd take our son back to Manila, you'd have no choice but to follow us, and we'd be forced to be in a position where we'd have to stick together because Tony wouldn't be able to come back to the States afterwards, and he'd kind of limit her situation. So Marco was doing some very terrible controlling stuff that he did. But now there's also the complicated thing of Fiona and Marco's dad wants to take Luca back to take him back home with them. And it's like, right, he should be here. Like, I get it, you love your son. But he's like, no parent should outlive their child, because when you do that, you feel like you failed, because both of the parents feel like they failed Marco. It's like, right, we spoiled him too much, but that's because we thought you were stronger, Fiona, which Fiona was like, I get that, but I also needed you too, Mom. Like, that's why she has a very complicated relationship with her brother, because it's like, right, he was a spoiled brat, he got all the attention and love, but it's like, right, just because we gave so much attention to your brother, it's like, because we knew you were so strong that you didn't need it. But it's like, yeah, like, no matter how strong she is, it's a thing of she had to become strong because of your lack of attention towards her. But it's like, yeah, but it's like, maybe if we handle things differently with like how we raised both of you, like, who knows? But it's like, her mom's like, I'm so proud of you doing what you did. You went to a new country and you raised 2 children on your own. And so it's like, right, no wonder like Tony wants to stay here with you and the kids as a family. But for Fiona's father, it's like, Luca's all I have left of my son, my one and only son. So I want him near me. But it's like, yes, but he's not your son, he's mine. And how can you want to take my baby away from me? And like, right, you lost your son and you want to do the same thing to me. So I don't think that's resolved. How long, like, obviously they're probably going to be in Vegas for another episode. They didn't leave at the end of this one, so it's probably going to be a thing of, yeah, they're going to be here probably until next episode, or maybe they're probably going to end up staying until this whole Luca thing is resolved, or maybe they're just going to be here long enough for after the funeral stuff. I mean, well, the funeral stuff was this episode, but I'm like, maybe one more episode, or maybe they'll be here for a good chunk of the season. We'll have to see. I don't think Tony's going to be like, oh, like, take Luca with you, unless things get really, really bad, and it's just like, right, Luca's better in the Manila than he is here with me. I don't know. I doubt that. She's always going to want her baby by her side, so it's like, why would she want to ever give him up? Like, because she's like, right, the best and safest place he can be is with me right here and right now. So a lot of moving pieces, a lot of really interesting things to kind of keep in mind as we go forward into the next episode. I'm excited to see what happens next. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.